Hi, my name is Gabriel Loya. Today I'm going to be talking about the plastic problem. This is a topic I chose because it's something I've been aware of since my freshman year of high school, and I just want people to understand it on a deeper level and really understand the impact that it has on the world. First, to start, why this matters. When most people think about plastic pollution, they just think about trash in the ocean, but what I learned is that it's much bigger than that. Plastic affects marine life, ecosystems, it enters food chains, it impacts human health, and which ultimately is a global issue. Animals are constantly surrounded by plastic, and over time, that plastic begins to degrade and break down, and it enters people's food, enters the animals' food, and if we eat the animals, such as tuna, such as other fish, us as human beings intake that as well, which is detrimental to our health over time. That's why it's a global issue. That's why it affects all human beings and not just animal life. And if it affects the food chain, it's going to eventually get back down to us. As you see, sea turtles are right there, and sea turtles are, at risk of being endangered, as well as, the ones that are most subject to plastic in the ocean, which is from human development. It's on us to fix it. The rise of plastic became widely used after World War II because it was cheap, durable, and easy to produce, which meant over time people replaced it. People replaced materials that were used before, like glass, metal, and natural fibers, for plastic. So society began to shift towards single-use items like plastic bottles and packaging, stuff like that. According to research, over 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic have been produced over time. And a lot of that has become waste instead of just being recycled. That really shows just how massive this problem has become since plastic has been created. Plastic was created originally it was not meant to harm the environment, but it was actually meant to help it. Early plastics were developed to replace materials that came from animals, like ivory used for things like combs and billiard balls. This helped reduce the demand for those natural resources, but over time, as plastic became easier to produce and cheaper, it started being overused, which is what led to the problem we see today. Even though animals aren't being slaughtered in order for us to get the materials needed as much as they were, it hasn't stopped the environment from being at risk. It's only slowed it down a lot since the late 1800s, but it's still causing problems today. So the marine life specifically is what is the main focus on the environment. Marine life and the ocean. On land, it's not too much because we move it out of the way as human beings. But the environmental impact of plastic pollution is super serious, especially in the ocean. Animals mistake the plastic for food, especially when it's tiny. They think it's fish food. And it blocks their digestive system, which leads to a very slow death. As you can see, that that fish is breathing through a straw, which it's not meant to. Plastic also has these harmful chemicals that are used to make it that's obviously not meant to be digested, causing animals to die very slowly and tragically. Entire ecosystems are being disrupted. Now, earlier I mentioned that plastic degrades and breaks down. It becomes microplastics. It's a really big issue, and I learned that microplastics, you can't really see them at a point. They're tiny plastic that comes from larger plastics breaking down over time. They're so small, they're in oceans, fresh water, they're in air, and especially in food. I remember I saw a Daily Dose of Internet video where you can open up a can of tuna, you can find some plastic in there. Not because it's from the can, it's because fish are consuming it, which is sad. So it's hard to remove microplastics, which is a huge deal. The way to stop it is to go to the source. Now, speaking of the source, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Ironically, I doubt anybody has heard about this. It is located between California and Hawaii, and has been gathered around due to wind, as you can see from the picture, from the ocean, and is one of the biggest examples it is the biggest example of plastic pollution in the world. It's about twice the size of Texas. Now, that's all the plastic combined. That's how much it spreads over. It's not that one pile right there is 2 Texases. But over the ocean, it's the size of 2 Texases, which is crazy. There are about 100,000 tons of plastic in this area alone, which shows how concentrated the problem can become. Because animals may try to swim in there. Animals may go there thinking it's land, try to land on it, get caught. And it's awful. And things need to be done about it. The cleanup efforts are pretty insane. I remember when I first researched this my freshman year, I was thinking about 2 boats carrying a huge net to go through and just carry the plastic. That would be super powerful. It might need to be a ton. Come to find out, this guy Boyan Slot made the idea before I even thought about it. And he's the founder and CEO of the Ocean Cleanup, a nonprofit focused on cleaning up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the ocean of the plastic in the ocean. Sorry, excuse me. He designed this system that floats on the ocean and uses barriers to collect plastic as it moves with the currents. So it's not really powered by a rotor, a flipper. I think flipper is what it's called. I could be completely wrong. I think I am wrong. But it guides plastic into one area so it can be removed more easily. It's a really big, innovative idea, but it also shows how big the problem is, because that says 01. I'm pretty sure that means it's Mark 1 because they're already down to 03. There's a Mark 3 of this device that I couldn't really find specifically the name of. System 03. But even with this technology, it's really hard to keep up with all the plastic that's still entering in the ocean. There's plastic from 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Somebody found a Game Boy from the 90s in this garbage patch, which is pretty insane to think about. This has been a problem ever since plastic was created. Again, environmental justice. Poor communities are affected more, and not everyone is affected equally. Wealthier countries produce a lot more plastic than poorer countries, but much of that waste ends up in developing countries that don't have the resources to manage it properly. Even within countries, lower income communities are more likely to live near landfills or polluted area because nobody wants to live there. Therefore, the rent is low. So the people who contribute the least to the problem are often the ones most affected by it. So this house over here, it's by the lake, but it's a disgusting lake. Probably freaking $500 a month. Or I don't know how poor the country is, but it sucks. So solutions, as mentioned before, Boyan Slot is working on to fix the problem. But how do we make sure this problem doesn't happen again? We can ban plastic, which is really hard because so many things are made from plastic. There's 100,000 tons in the ocean, but there's 8.3 billion that have been created since plastic's been founded, which is crazy to think about. And we're doing our best to recycle it, but frankly, we might just not have room. Or once it's recycled once, we don't think to recycle it again. So plastic ban is an option, but it's hard. And recycling programs are an option, but it's difficult to maintain it. And biodegradable plastics are a good idea, but they're just hard to produce. They're more expensive to produce. Therefore, corporations will want to go the cheaper route because it makes them the most money. Which is why, at the root of it, we need to keep corporates responsible. There's an idea to put a penalty on, but Jeff Bezos has a $250,000 penalty for having 2 hive bushes in his house, and he just pays it every single year. If you can pay enough, you can get by the penalties. So it's hard, and I'm not hating on the rich, but I just know that these big corporations are working to make the most bang for their buck. So it's difficult. My perspective, that's me in a tree, being with nature, being with the environment. My personal connection to this is I hated seeing people litter when I was growing up. It absolutely despised me. I still remember, I had my bike on me. This kid had a big bag of Funyuns, and he finished it, and they threw it on the ground right before we were about to cross the street. I was so upset about that. I want to make sure that people understand that the one piece of trash that they found, that they throw on the floor, if 100,000 people thought the same thing, then 100,000 pieces of plastic is on the floor. A piece of trash is on the floor. So that's why small actions lead to a big impact. You know, It's a slippery slope. Being aware of this matters. Finally, to conclude, just want to reemphasize, it's a global issue. It requires collective action, meaning that we all work together as human beings to figure out what solution we are going to bring to solve this problem. We're only given one planet. We're looking into Mars, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to settle on Mars anytime soon. Change starts with awareness. And it starts with you. Thank you so much for listening. Really quick, I don't know if you need this, but this is my works cited from all the sources I used. And thank you so much for listening. Have a blessed day.